Lexus, Lexus. These two are separated by a single letter, an L versus a G. Well, that and about $40,000. Wild, right? This LX is the 300 series real Land Cruiser that we don't get here in the US, and it's in its Overtrail getup, so it's got some real off-road hardware. And this GX Overtrail, it's not just any GX, it's our GX that we bought with our own money. And it's already taken down the Toyota Land Cruiser and the 4Runner TRD Pro, but today, it's gonna step up in competition. So we're here at the OHV park because shooting these two on top of a parking garage just wouldn't do them justice. And we will drive them on trails, but this isn't our normal off-road video because we're here to answer a different question. And that is there any way that this thing can be worth $40,000 extra? Let's follow the money. We're Edmunds, and we test hundreds of cars each year on the road and at our private track, so you get the most trusted reviews. If you want to know which car, truck, or SUV is the best, then stick with us. We'll kick things off here in the GX, and as I mentioned before, this isn't just any GX, it's ours, part of our 1-year road test fleet of 20 or so vehicles that we own to let you know what they're like to live with every day. And to keep up with this thing or any of those other cars, please give us a like and subscribe, or head over to Edmunds and check out our news page. Since we've had this thing for about 6 months now, it's done a lot of stuff. We're talking 1,000-mile family road trips, daily commutes, and of course, a starring role in an off-road video or two. So we know this SUV pretty well, and we like it for the most part, but there are a few things to watch out for. We'll start out with these seats, which are big, wide, and comfortable, which we like. Now, they are wrapped in synthetic leather. Here in the Overtrail, you actually can't get real leather, but they do also have these microfiber kind of suede inserts, which look nice and also still feel nice. That means that front seat comfort is good, but it's not all great up here. We've actually noticed that the footwells are strangely thin on both of these, and if you're wearing boots or any big kind of shoes, one of our testers noted that it can start to feel cramped and there's not a lot of room for your knees, and this is a theme that continues into the back seat as well. The other area in which the front of the GX struggles is small item storage, which is very important for an SUV. There's just not a ton of places to put stuff. You do get this kind of like weird little shelf up here, but that's very tiny and you can kind of barely fit a phone in there. It sort of hangs out. In the center console, it looks pretty big, but ours actually has the optional cooler box, which keeps my drinks nice and cool. And as one of our staffers noted on a road trip, helpful for keeping chocolate bars from melting for your kids, but it does cut into the overall places for you to put things. There's nowhere to put a bag, for example. Other SUVs just do this much better. The GX's technology offerings, they are a bit of a mixed bag. You do get a pretty large touchscreen standard, but remember that you're not gonna be able to actually use the whole thing because this bottom part here, that's reserved for the climate controls and those are persistent. What it does have though is wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, and that's what we use for the most part, and that works great, looks great, takes up the whole screen, and the responsiveness of the screen also very good. What is less good is this digital instrument cluster. And it's not that it looks bad, it's just very, very hard to modify and actually get the view that you want. And it doesn't do a great job of displaying usable info. Again, there are other vehicles that do this dual screen setup much better. The rest of the control scheme we do like more. On the steering wheel, you're just getting physical buttons, which I like, no touch sensitive, weird haptic stuff there. Good for that. And right here is where you're going to actually change your drive modes and your different terrain settings. And also the setting for high and for low and your different lockers is all very easily placed. So if you're going to go off-road, you'll appreciate that you don't have to dive into any menus to change any of those settings. Charging options are on par with any modern vehicle. You do get 2 USB-C charging ports up here and a wireless charging pad, although weirdly, the wireless charging pad isn't standard. You actually have to pay $175 to add it in, even on this $75,000 car. There is one thing that kind of bothers me about it, and that is the shape of it. So your phone doesn't quite fit square, and that kind of activates my OCD a touch, but we haven't noticed that it affects the charging negatively. The biggest issue that we have with the GX though is a lack of space, and this is something that's true of many of the TNGA-F vehicles that we tested, again, like the 4Runner and the Land Cruiser. The floor here, you can't really see it, but this is about 6 inches higher than the footwells in front. So you're sitting up kind of high, and it also means that your knees, they're elevated off the seat back, and as you can tell, this seat is set up where I like to drive, and legroom is pretty tight for a vehicle vehicle that's this big. And on top of that, the doors, they don't open all the way. They only swing out maybe like 70 degrees. And that makes the door opening pretty slim to climb in. One of our staff members has teenagers, and he said that when he had this vehicle, they complained constantly about a lack of room back here, especially when he would pick them up from school and they would have to jam their backpacks down here between their feet, and then there's just nowhere for them to go. And it's not just teenagers that are going to have trouble fitting with these small door openings. If you're trying to install a car seat, that's going to be tough as well. Now, this is a 2-row version of the GX. With the Overtrail, you can only get 2 rows, but the other trim levels of the GX, you can actually add a 3rd row as well. But that 3rd row, it's definitely not any better when it comes to space. Amenities are about what you would expect when it comes to the back row of an SUV. 2 USB charging ports here, air vents here. Nothing to really complain about on that front. And speaking of things that you won't complain about, if you're looking for a great deal on a GX or any other new car, head over to Edmunds, where we'll hook you right up. Now, when it comes to the cargo area, the GX nails the most important part for an SUV. It's just simply got a ton of space back here behind its back seat. But other than that, this area is a bit lacking when it comes to features. And that's because there is really no easy way to drop the seats from back here. For a luxury vehicle, you might expect some kind of quick release here in the back, but there isn't. If you want to lower the seats from the back, you got to kind of fling your body in here, reach all the way up here, and then pitch that forward. But then it also will do that because other versions of the GX, again, have a 3rd row. Now, the problem also is that when this thing is folded back down here in this position, as you can see, it doesn't make a flat cargo floor. So if you were overlanding in this thing and you were going to try to sleep in the back, you just got to account that you got maybe an 8-inch shelf there, and that's going to make things mighty uncomfortable for you. There is one other thing about this cargo area, however, that we do like, and that is the fact that you can access it even with the lift gate closed, and that's because you can open the glass separately. So if you have things in here that you don't want to fall out, you can still get access to them without having to open up the whole thing. Now, you do have to watch out for the load-in height. It is pretty high on this vehicle, but as we're going to see on the LX, it can be even higher for vehicles on this platform with a hybrid powertrain. Oh, and by the way, the GX, its towing capacity is excellent, just over 9,000 pounds. Okay, now we're taking a trip down a little bit of a dirt road, or kind of something that simulates a trail. And as its name might suggest, the Overtrail is pretty good on a trail. Now, the highlight of driving this thing is its powertrain, twin turbocharged 3.4 liter V6 up front. The first GX 550 we tested, that was an Overtrail Plus. That thing, 6.7 seconds from 0 to 60, which is real quick. This one, though, the one that we own at our track, it was even quicker, just 6.4 seconds to 60, and this thing can really get up and go. Now, when it comes to off-road equipment, this thing doesn't really skimp. Center and rear lockers. No front locker, though, and it also doesn't have a disconnecting front sway bar, but it does have a system called KDSS, and what that does is designed to actually tighten up the front sway bar, so when you're driving on the street, it feels more athletic and put together, but then it also is meant to loosen up and give you more articulation when you're off-road. All that happens sort of invisibly to the driver, and for the most part, the system works decently. The GX isn't what I would call a great riding vehicle. When it's on the street, it does feel a touch floaty, a little bit bouncier than you would like, especially compared to a car-based crossover, but for the off-road capability that you're getting, it's a pretty good trade-off. A pretty comprehensive set of driver aids comes standard here, as it does on the LX, so adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, all that good stuff. It does come standard. If we've had one complaint about driving the GX regularly, is actually these side mirrors. You get really big windows all around, so that does make your natural visibility pretty good, but for some reason, these side mirrors, they're real tall and skinny, so they give it bigger blind spots than you would think. This thing also has a tendency to get a bit noisy. So I know when you think of Lexus, you think of real quiet, you think of real comfortable. This thing sort of makes trade-offs in that realm in order to give you this capability. You've got 33-inch Toyo open country all-terrain tires at each corner, so you also get a bit more tire noise. So yeah, I guess against what you would expect from a Lexus traditionally, it lacks a bit of refinement. But those are minor gripes, because all in all, I would say that we enjoy the driving experience in this vehicle a pretty good amount. What we don't enjoy, though, is the fuel economy. In our time with it so far, it's only gotten about 17 mpg, even with all of those road trips thrown in. And you also have to factor in that this thing doesn't have a giant gas tank. It's only got about 21 gallons. So if you look at it, the range of this vehicle, it's only a bit more than 350 miles, and that means you're going to be filling up fairly regularly. Now, if you want to see more of the GX's off-road capability, you can check out those other videos that I referenced earlier. And again, on the whole, we've enjoyed having this vehicle as a part of our fleet, even with its second row space issues. The funny thing is too, that this price tag, it actually feels quite fair for this vehicle, especially when you look at how the 4Runner TRD Pro and the Toyota Land Cruiser are priced. This thing isn't that much more than either of those, and at 75 grand about, it feels like you're getting a pretty good amount of vehicle for the money. The big question though, again, is are we gonna be able to say the same thing about the LX? This thing might look bigger and badder, but once you get inside, it really isn't. If you're paying this much more for a vehicle, you're probably expecting it to be larger, but that simply isn't the case here in the LX. It's got the exact same length wheelbase as the GX, and if you look on the spec sheet, the third row here in this vehicle, it's actually got less legroom than that optional third row in the GX, and that is disappointing. Now, when it comes to design and materials, you are getting real semi-aniline leather on these seats. And yes, the interior as a whole definitely feels nicer than what you're getting in the GX. These seats heated and ventilated as well, but they also come with a massage function, which is pretty good. It isn't just like bladders that blow up. They actually feel like little knob thingies pushing into you. So kudos to Lexus for putting a good massage into these seats. But then again, you're also running into the exact same space issues that we had in the GX. These footwells are very tight, in part thanks to the center console being super wide. And yes, the headroom is excellent, but overall, it just doesn't feel quite as roomy as you would expect. Small item storage is also once again a struggle. You aren't getting that little shelf up there, but you are getting a little cubby down here that you can fit small items in. But again, anything bigger than like a phone, you're gonna have trouble finding a space for it. And these cup holders, they are a bit small. Now, this center console bin is cool because you can open it in both directions like this. So both the front passenger and driver have easy access to the cooler box that this thing has, but the one in the LX, it's just a bit bigger. When it comes to technology here in the LX, you are getting an extra screen. So you've got the digital gauge cluster here, the screen up here, but then also a secondary screen down here that gives you a bit more information. You can see what that looks like there. And again, wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay come along for the ride. And thankfully here, a wireless charging pad came standard, so you don't have to pay extra for it, which is good because this thing costs $118,000. Now, when it comes to usability, this is where the LX starts to have issues. Well, you like that you have more physical controls for the climate, but it's also just kind of weird how this whole thing interacts because this screen and these controls are supposed to work together, but then they don't really do so, and it just makes doing things more complicated. So, for example, if you want to change the temperature, you've got these nice little thingies right here to toggle through that. But if you want to change the fan speed, you've got to actually do that through the screen, and that's kind of weird. So it's a weird mix of physical controls and controls in the screen where it's unclear what you're going to have to use for either, and it will actually take a long time to get used to. Now, there is a settings screen for this screen, but it's kind of weird because really the only things you can change are the brightness and the contrast, and they show all these colors here for reasons that I don't really understand. And you can just kind of, I guess, see when you're changing the brightness and the contrast how they look. But again, it's just a very weird use of this space, and it ends up being rather impractical. So yes, more physical controls are nice, but when some of them are physical and some of them are here and it's really not clear how they're delineated, it's just really confusing. Oh, and by the way, remember those massaging seats that I mentioned earlier? If you want to turn those on, well, you've got to go here. You've got to go all the way back into the Lexus menu. You've got to go to vehicles. You've got to go to seat controls, and then you've got to hit massage, and then you've got to pick the seat, and then you can turn them on and turn it off. And then if you want to do a different seat, you got to go back here and pick the other seat. And then if they're on and you want to turn them off and you're using Android Auto, you've got to go through that whole process again. Why? Oh, and by the way, you're thinking to yourself, maybe I can just use the voice commands to do that. Well, turn off the driver's massaging seat.
Turning off AC.
As you can see, the LX suffers from the same second row space issues that the GX does. It just really doesn't have enough legroom, but it does have a lot more features back here, starting with this panel right here, which allows you to adjust the climate controls on your own. And you're also getting heated and ventilated outboard seats here in the back row. That's a great feature. And another thing that we really like is the air vents are also here in the ceiling in the correct place. So especially if you have kids in car seats, it just helps you to circulate air a lot better and keep everyone cool. But again, space issues, so putting in those car seats, it's gonna be a bit of a struggle. And there's one final thing I like about the LX's back seat, and that is that there's a little button here so I can actually pop this open. So I have access to this cooler box as well, so I can grab a cold drink without having to ask for help from anyone sitting up front. Now, if I'm being honest, I haven't really been looking forward to this part, but if there's a third row in here, we've got to show you how it works. So getting in, this thing flips forward, and then you kind of climb your way this way and fall back here. Ow. And then this thing comes back, and then ow, my foot, ow. And then this thing comes up. If we put this in this place where a normal human would put it. Okay. So as you can see, there is no space between my knees and the seat here. And there's also nowhere to put my feet, which makes it doubly uncomfortable. Now, if you look right here, you can see that the seat bottom, this is only about 5 inches above the floor. So you end up sitting in here curled like into a nice little ball, which is not so good. But at least it's got air vents in the right place up here in the ceiling, and you do have a USB port for each passenger. Now this row, it is power reclining, so you can make it go forward and back. This is as far back as it goes. And the other problem though, as you can see, is headroom. So if I sit up straight, my head is firmly touching the ceiling. This is a third row that is not good for adults. It's probably not great for kids either. Just generally don't stick anyone back here unless you have to. And if this is the LX's calling card over the GX, it's not really that usable of a third row, is it? The LX doesn't have the opening glass that we like so much on the GX, but on the whole, I would say it does have a few more features in its cargo area. Starting with this power inverter, it goes up to 2400 watts. In the GX, it only goes up to 400 or 1000. Now this third row, it is powered. The problem is though, to put it down, you've got to hold the buttons. So I'm gonna go ahead and start that process because it's gonna take a few seconds. And then of course it's going to stop, so I have to press them again. And as you can see, this takes a little while to fold down, but when it does, you get a decent amount of cargo space behind the second row. Behind the third row, you've got basically nothing. This shelf, even under here, this area isn't really that deep. Can't really tuck stuff under there either. On the whole, this thing has actually significantly less cargo room than the GX. Fold down both the third row and the second row seats, and you're only looking at just over 60 cubic feet of cargo room with or without a third row installed. In the GX, you're getting 90 or you're getting around 75, even with a third row installed. But again, that Overtrail version, no third row, so 90 cubic feet with both rows folded down, and that is great. Now, if you look on the back of these seats here, there is no easy way to drop them, unlike we had in the GX. So to do so from back here, you're gonna have to kind of climb up and do this, and that kind of sucks. I need a break for a second. Okay, now I'll go fold those things down. Now, we mentioned in the GX, you're gonna have trouble overlanding it if you wanna sleep in the back. Same problems here. Even though this floor is a little bit flatter, the third row and the second rows are about even. There is about a 1 foot gap between them. So good luck sleeping in here if you have a sleeping bag. If you have a big mattress, you might be able to bridge it. But if it's like an air mattress and it's like a little bit flimsy, it's gonna dip in the middle, and that's not great for sleeping. Oh, and by the way, this thing also tows less, only about 8,000 pounds. GX is just better in the cargo area. So while the back of the LX's cargo area might not be all that useful, you know what is useful? Edmunds, where if you want any more information on either of these vehicles or any vehicle that's on the road, you can check out our full ratings and reviews. Now we're behind the wheel of the LX, and even though it shares the Overtrail name, there are some definite mechanical differences between these two vehicles, starting with what's under the hood. So this thing has a hybrid powertrain, and it actually uses the same 3.4 liter twin turbo V6, but it adds on an electric motor, of course, and that gives this thing significantly more powers. It's got about 100 more horsepower and 100 more pound-feet of torque than the GX, though it is actually slower to 60 miles an hour. This thing was 6.8 seconds from 0 to 60 at our track, and that's mostly because it's about 700 pounds heavier as well. So more power, but more weight means just a touch slower. However, I would say that any of these big SUVs, anything that's under 7 seconds to 60, that's really, really quick still. So this thing is going to be able to reach a few places that the GX simply can't just because it's got better clearances. It's also got a front locker, which is a more conventional off-road setup. I think if we were out rock crawling or something, you could do stuff in this vehicle that the GX couldn't match. Although on a trail like this, I would say the LX does feel more compliant. I'm getting jostled around a little bit less and it's more comfortable. And I would say the same thing applies when you're driving the LX on the street. Overall, the experience is just a touch more refined. It rides more comfortably, and on the highway especially, it's less floaty and feels a bit more stable. Steering and handling between these two feels about the same, and they actually even have the exact same tires, so no difference there. Now with this hybrid powertrain, yes, fuel economy is better in the LX, but probably not by as much as you would think. This thing is still only rated at an estimated 20 mpg combined, and it's actually got a slightly smaller fuel tank than the GX, about 2 gallons smaller, so when it comes to range, it doesn't actually do all that much better, so you are going to save a little bit of money at the pump, but neither of these things is really great on gas. Now, after a day of tooling around out here in the off-road park, I will have to say I like the LX more than I thought I would. There are things that it does better than the GX. It's got a clearly nicer interior with better materials. It's got some features that that vehicle doesn't have, like the massaging seats. And in the back seat especially, you're getting a lot more features with the heated and ventilated second row, the climate controls back there, and the air vents in the ceiling. And yes, off-road, you're going to be able to get to a few places that that GX can't reach simply because of the greater clearances. However, it still suffers from the same space issues, and I think that if you aren't taking these things out to somewhere like Moab, that edging capability isn't something that most people will really exercise. So when it comes to talking about value, does this thing feel 40 grand more than the GX? We're gonna have to talk about that in a second. Before we get into our verdict, if there's any questions you have about these two vehicles or anything you think we missed, or if there are other videos you'd like us to make, please let us know in the comments below. We read all of them. And if you've been enjoying our videos and find them helpful, we would ask for a like and subscribe. They go a long way towards helping us to make more of them. So, in conclusion, there's absolutely no possible world, dimension, or alternative world or dimension where $115,000 is a reasonable price for Lexus to charge for that vehicle when you consider that the GX does pretty much 95% of what that thing does for 40 grand less. Add on the fact that you're not getting any extra room, and I guess, yeah, if you really want an Overtrail with 3 rows, that's the only way to go. But if you're not gonna go off-roading, just get one of these in a different trim level, add its own 3rd row, and save a ton of money. I'm almost offended by how much Lexus wants to charge for this vehicle when it's fundamentally the same thing on the same platform with the same wheelbase and the same this and the same that. And don't buy one of these, buy one of these, and if you absolutely need a 3rd row to go off-road, look elsewhere. Thanks for watching.